Recording in progress.
Hello, Soul of the Month. Welcome to another group practice of our repertoire. And this month, June 2025, we're focusing on the first movement, the Allegretto, of CPE Bach's Sonata in G, also known as the Hamburger Sonata. And I'm really excited to bring this piece back with our group. I know that it was worked on with some people a couple of years ago, but it's always nice to look at a piece of music with fresh eyes if you practiced it a few years back. And maybe you notice that you're playing better than you did 18 months or 20 months ago, or however long ago was that the piece was first introduced. And for those of you who it's new, then this is great because we get to explore this wonderful piece together. I would like to say thank you to Flute World for being our wonderful partners. And remember out there, if any of you are ordering sheet music or accessories, at checkout, use code Allison 2025 for 10% off sheet music and accessories. There's no limit to what you put in your cart. And yes, that does apply to clearance and sale items too. So if you're ordering sheet music or accessories, make sure you use the Allison 2025 code to get 10% off at our partner store, Flute World. So with no further ado, let's just do a little bit of warming up together, and we can then just enjoy creating sound. So if everybody will go ahead and check their device and make sure that you are currently muted, that will very much help us just do a little bit of warming up together. So the piece is in G major, as the title says, and this is so funny because I've taught this piece a few times, and I love saying, what key is this in? I say that in every piece. And the students are just like staring at the music like, I'm afraid to say. I'm like, it's in the title, right? So we'll just start with a G major 5-note scale pattern really slow. G, A, B, C, D, C, B, A, G, and then hold that final G. Let's do the exact same thing up the octave. The only difference in fingering will be the high D fingering. And then something I think would be a little bit of fun because of all these little trills, mordents, and gruppetto that we have in this period of music. What if we just take those notes and do a little mordent? So we'll stay a diatonic, or notes of the key, and we'll do a mordent, which is the ornament where you play the principal note, the note above in the key signature, and then return to the principal note. So for example, G, A, G, A, B, A, B, C, B, C, D, C, D, E, D. Right? So enjoy making a little mordent, and you maybe take it all the way up the scale. Maybe you stick with those 5 notes that we just played, but just doing a little mordent with enjoying that upper neighbor. Whether you choose to use real fingerings or trill fingerings, it's a good time to explore those options. Now let's add on a little bit. A lot of the trills in this period end with another ornament that I think is called a Nachschlag. It's been a long time since I've been in music history class. Don't ask how long. And that will be the lower neighbor in the key signature. So let's just, and for now, we'll just think the reverse mordent or the lower neighbor. So going G, F sharp G, A, G, A, B, A, B, C, B, C, etc. As many notes as you might want to practice there. And if we put the two together, we'll create essentially a gruppetto. The note above, the note below, and return to the note. So 5 notes. Principal note, upper neighbor, principal note, lower neighbor, principal note. So it would be G, A, G, F sharp, G, A, B, A, G, A, B, C, B, A, B, etc. Doing as many or as few of those as feels right. But a lot of times I notice the hesitation. The hesitation is the biggest thing that keeps students from feeling success in this piece. And that hesitation is either in two places, the 30-second note runs or the ornamentation. And those are the two places where students seem to hesitate the most. So if you make the technique of those ornaments part of your warm-up, then when you come into the piece, you practice away from the piece, those ornaments. When you come to the piece, hopefully it feels already more accessible and the mind is less afraid and more ready to tackle those ornaments. So any thoughts or questions about adding that kind of little ornament warm-up? Or does anybody else do something similar or something completely different that might be related to practicing the ornaments before you play the ornaments?
I was taught to do it without ornaments, to learn it without ornaments and then add ornaments afterwards.
Yeah, and that's super common way because then you're hearing the melody and the important notes, and then you're embellishing later. So that's a great way of approaching this piece for sure. I personally also though like to have students practice the ornaments at the practice tempos. So if you get all the way to the desired tempo that you're going to play, say if you make it up to 52 for the quarter note, and then you start adding ornaments, it's hard for the ego sometimes to slow the metronome back down. And so sometimes, depending on the player, those ornaments get put in hastily rather than as part of it. So if you are one of the people who adds ornaments later, my suggestion would just be to whatever tempo you've achieved without ornaments, go ahead and back it off a few clicks. So that way you're adding the ornaments without adding stress or tension. Remember, whatever we practice, including in the mind or in the body, is what we learn and then what we'll perform, right? So we don't want to practice tension or fear or stress or any of those things. Any other thoughts or questions? All right. Well, with no further ado, let's go ahead and start looking at this first movement, the allegretto. In 3/4, we have a bunch of cute little ornaments, a ton of slur twos, and if you watched the video that I posted before, I'm approaching the slur twos with a little bit of a stress release, dia, dia, dia. The agogic accent that would go with words, the two-syllable words that come to mind fastest would be like sighing, crying, dying, where you're stressing the first part of the word and releasing on the second, especially with gerunds like that. You could probably use happier gerunds than those, but that kind of press release, I think is very nice for this style of music with the slur twos especially. And let's see, Mary Ellen, would you be willing to demonstrate the opening of this piece for us today? As much as you want to play.
Okay. Oh,
I know, isn't it so fun?
it's nerve-wracking. It's always so nerve-wracking. Someone told, I think it was my voice teacher that told me, if you're not nervous, you don't care. So when you said you get nervous, you don't care if you're not nervous. All right, let's try. Okay, that's it.
Wonderful job. All right, can we make sure that everybody out there is appreciating Mary Ellen for putting herself out there first thing in the morning, too? Going first. That's not scary at all, is it? All right, so that was really great. For me, I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, the sound did cut in and out just a little bit, but I was able to hear enough that I've got a few thoughts that I'd like to share with you.
I'll
First,
try to figure that out next time.
yeah, and first, can you just tell me something about what you just did that you're proud of?
I got through the runs without completely screwing it up.
Isn't that already something to be proud of? Good
Yeah,
job. I got through it. And did anybody out there get hurt? Nope. And neither did you, right? So we're all okay. And your dog's didn't even react. So
surprisingly.
you just got that chill personality going on that the dogs are responding to. Are there parts that you feel uncomfortable with that you'd like to discuss before I start rambling?
Yeah, well, again, the runs, I just don't think, I'm not sure that I like the articulation in the version that I have from my MSLP. First of all, secondly, I have not watched your video and I should have. So just like I'd like to make the runs sound much more effortless than I'm capable,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little bit of advice on that.
Sure, great question. And this is something that applies to this piece and just about everything else. So this is a great topic to have. Let's go around the room first because we all know that I talk a lot. Are there suggestions for practicing the runs? And first, let's talk about the 30-second note runs. So, for example, measure 9, 10, 11, and 12. So, around the room, I'd love to hear. You can type into the chat or you can unmute yourself and give a couple of suggestions for practicing runs.
You know what I'm going to say? It's Tafnel Gobert exercise, probably 4.
Tafanella Gobert, exercise number 4.
Yeah. And also 1 and 2, because it's good to do the shorter chunks.
Yeah, I love all of the exercises in that book. 1 and 2 are nice because you're doing repetition of small patterns, 5-note patterns. And so giving repetition over the smaller patterns allows you to really trust that you're doing it. And what do you love about 4, Sean, since that's the one that you said first?
It's got the longer sweeping runs and turnarounds at different points within the scale,
Yeah,
right?
so
So if you look at like old band literature where you're just doing an octave or maybe doing 2 octaves and you always turn around at the same spot, you might miss a turn when the music tells you to turn somewhere else.
great, yeah. And does it go up 9 notes and down 7, or does it go up like 5 notes and down 4? I can't remember. It's been a while. I think it goes up 9 notes and down 7 notes, so you're
Yeah.
kind of progressing. It's like you're climbing a mountain, getting higher each time that you go. Great, Sean. Thanks for that advice. How many of you out there have the Tafanella Gobert scale book? Super good
On
book.
IMSLP if you need it.
It is on IMSLP if you need it. A lot of people are loving the Jasmine Choi version too. That's out now. I still have I have 2 copies of the original because the covers, they're a bit quite loved.
Mine
Awesome.
disintegrated ages ago, so I have to rely on the
Let's
PDF.
see. iPad, and I think that might be Chris, said I subdivide 4 notes at a time. Are you there, Chris?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah. Would you demonstrate what you mean?
Okay, so how I do it, I just do 4 notes at a time. And normally like if I'm doing, so if the tempo is 58, I'll bring it down to maybe like 48. And then I'll just go, and then once I get that down, then I'll just bump it up 2 or 3 notches and go at it again. And then eventually I'll just piece it all together.
Great. I love that. So that is a type of chunking practice that we can do. And my personal preference is to do a beat plus a note because sometimes when we just do beats, especially if we're doing like a measure at a time, we don't get used to going over the bar line to the next measure or going over to the next beat. And sometimes then it can feel pulsy or clunky afterwards. So doing 4 notes at a time is cool, or doing 5, but doing a little bit of repetition. Mary Ellen, can we try that together? So let's see. Let's go to measure 9 first and do 5 notes. So 4 plus 1.
Do you want to hear me or no?
D, F sharp, E, D, E.
Do I need to be on mute still? I can
Nope, unmute yourself. Let's hear you.
unmute myself. Okay,
You are currently unmuted.
I am. Okay. Where am I?
Yeah. So rather than worrying about the whole run, let's just take part of it. And that part at the beginning is the trickiest part, the D, F sharp, right?
Yeah.
So let's just do D, F sharp, E, D, E. And do it until it feels comfortable. Yeah, so often, once we play it right one time, we move on. And that's just the
Okay.
ego wanting to let go of it. But what we repeat, where the repetition is, where we practice, is what we learn. So if you do a repetition with accuracy a couple of times, then you're going to be much more likely to have success when you come back to it later. So
Okay.
now we'll repeat the E natural, we'll double up the E and do the next four notes plus one. So that's an E minor five note pattern right there too, which you'll see in Taffy-Nogle-Bear number 2. Yeah, and that sounds like it feels and fits so comfortably in your hands. Where now when you look at that beat, you'll note that the only part maybe that felt uncomfortable was the D F sharp interval, right?
It's the F sharp. I know it's the F sharp.
And I don't blame you because that's so so tricky to have thirds in when we otherwise see scales. So another way that I like to practice that specifically, and I'd want to apply this to the third measure too in a second, is what I call Figaro because it just kind of reminds me of the opera tune a little bit. But let's do a repetition of the three notes, F sharp, E, D, F sharp, E, D, slurring it. Yep, and until it feels good. And then we'll shift by one note, and even though it's the same thing, it's going to feel different to the mind. E, D, F sharp, E, D, F sharp. So same three notes, just starting the E.
Is that, yeah?
Uh-huh. And then the same three notes starting the D. D, F sharp, E, D, F sharp, E, D.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that shifts the brain's perspective of how we're looking at those notes. And when we have success of all three of those variations, then we're much more likely to have success when we come to the piece. And so, especially if you notice your hands naturally going to its more familiar habit of playing a scale, playing all of the steps, it's good to have reinforced the repetition of doing it with that third in there. And another place that you might apply that would be the third measure. I did hear you play like a little bit of a G right before that leap to the A. And the
Yeah,
E, D,
I didn't mean
E,
to.
F sharp, A. So you might do a figaro of A, G, F sharp, A, G, F sharp, A, G, F sharp, A also. The cool
Okay.
thing is, like, once we get these patterns that include thirds better into our fingers, then they're there. So, like, just let that be part of your warm up for this piece, and then
Okay.
you won't have to practice that beat or that measure of the piece quite as much. I like
Super.
the way that you were articulating. I think you had nice, and I know that you want to change a few of the articulations, but I like the general style of your slurs and the
Okay.
slur twos, and your ornaments sounded nice and crisp. So, all in all, great job, Mary
Thank
Ellen.
you.
Do you have any other
Thank you.
questions or thoughts?
At the moment, no.
Any other shout outs from the group out there?
Thank
Those
you.
patterns at the beginning of those runs are kind of like written out gruppettos, right? So if you're practicing your ornaments, you'll get those patterns as well.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, many of
that's
them are measure 10, the D, E, D, F sharp, D. That would be like a gruppetto with a raised C sharp type of thing. So a lot of these patterns are stuff that you'll see in ornamentation or in other types of warm up. And then I see Nathan typed out suggestion from Flute Camp. Is there, Nathan, would you like to explain what you've got
Yes.
there?
Okay. There was a master class done yesterday, and there's a girl that had did a lot of past notes, and there's an exercise that the guest artist had given to the girl, and it was like doing the long note on the first note and going quick on the second note, and then going long, and then vice versa. She was like, and then vice versa. It just that was the exercise that she had her do. That was a suggestion I had given.
Wonderful, Nathan. Thank you for bringing that
I
up.
also had a blast that day. The
Yeah.
whole week.
So Nathan is referring to what we sometimes call rhythmic distortion, distorted rhythms, or alternate rhythm practice. And that's a good way also of shifting the mind's focus on the music. So when we use these distorted rhythms, we're making one note long and another note or another couple of notes shorter. And during the long note, the goal is for the brain to focus on what's going to happen next and arrive. And as Nathan said, and vice versa, we want to make sure that whatever rhythm patterns we do the opposite, so that way we don't develop an accidental swing type rhythm. So the first rhythm, if there's many rhythms that we can do, but if we just go with groups of two notes, long, short, long, kind of like swing style. And then the reverse, short, long. Right? And then there's so many more rhythm patterns that we could apply if we wanted to do even more. But that, Nathan, thanks for bringing that up, is such a powerful way of practicing. A little, teacher moment that I'd like to say though, it is so tempting to show that rhythm with your body, and with either moving the arms and the shoulders or doing extra pushes with the core muscles. And I would suggest avoid doing anything like that. Just do the rhythm with the air and the body being the way it's going to be when you play it smooth. Otherwise, you're kind of teaching the body to either do ab pulses or shoulder movements that might interrupt the run when it gets faster. Cool. Great. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for that. Let's see, moving on. Gwen, let's hear you play a little bit.
Okay.
All right, Gwen, what part are you going to play for us?
Oh, I was gonna just play the beginning,
The
but
beginning is such a good place to start.
why not?
All right, let's pause just for a second. I heard the first measure just great. Is your original sound for musicians clicked on? Could you by any chance then maybe just scoot a little further from the microphone? Sometimes the microphone likes to also do that. Let's try it again.
Or just toggle it off and on, make sure it kicks in.
Okay, let me try that. You hear that?
All right, yeah. Is the group hearing her very well? Okay, sometimes I just wonder if it's me. I did hear a little bit though, Gwen, and what I could hear sounded quite nice. You have got a nice, lovely tone, and the technique looked pretty clean. Do you have any specific questions that we can just discuss?
Um, well, actually, my my question is more around where is it? I mean, my trouble spot is like 47 through those runs. With the runs, actually, it's not 47. It's like 40, 50, I guess. Well, 49 is where it starts. But where with the F sharp, well, yeah, so it's 50, 51, like the F sharps, that one.
Yeah, those runs are tricky, and I think they're tricky the trickiest runs in the piece probably. And I think what we covered just a second ago with Mary Ellen would probably apply pretty well to that too. Doing
Yep.
smaller chunks, 5 notes first, and then doing a beat plus a note when the 5 notes feel good, and then maybe trying the rhythm distortions with the swing and the bebop or the long, short, and the short, long, as Nathan described. So let's just try that together. Let's pick one of those little chunks. How about measure 51? And hopefully we'll hear, but let's do the first 5 notes. And then repeat the E and go to the A. And then A to E. E to the F sharp. And then the F sharp to the E. And then the E to the next downbeat. And making sure that we know that that last C sharp is still a C sharp in that measure. Okay, and then after we do those 5 notes at a time, let's try doing the 8 plus 1, or a beat plus a note. So back to 51. Going from the F sharp to the A. And then beat 2. And then beat 3. Yeah, and then we could do the measure plus a note, and then we could do the rhythm distortion, swing, and bebop. I think it's also sometimes good to figure out what's happening in the music, and if there's another way of playing it away from the music. So I think most of the trickiness is happening getting to the F sharps. That first half of all 3 of those, well, the first half of the first and third beat is a D major arpeggio. So let's play a 1 octave D major arpeggio, D, F sharp, A, D. You're not going to see it in the music exactly, but D, F sharp, A, D, A. Let's hear it again. And then if we do first inversion, we'll go from F sharp to F sharp. So this is where I ask, and I can't hear it quite well, but looking at the hands, is that where the hands feel uncomfortable?
Probably, yeah.
Probably. So maybe if you just play the D major arpeggio and the first inversion of the D major arpeggio as part of your warm-up before you come to this section where you know that you can easily and comfortably and without stress or tension and then adding on, just going up that first inversion D major arpeggio, but then going to an E. Does that sound like the Cheers opening? Is that Cheers? All of a sudden, I'm going to be like, I want to go somewhere where everybody knows my name. Okay. All right, Gwen. So how do those practice tips feel?
That's helpful. Yeah.
Excellent. Anything else from the group out there?
It's just Joan. I just want to second the motion that that's the hardest measure in the whole thing. I'm still struggling with that.
If it feels tricky, you're in good company, right? It is tricky. Out of curiosity, just a little roll call. How many of you are using your middle finger on the high F sharp, and how many of you are using your ring finger on the high F sharp?
I think I'm using the middle finger.
Middle finger?
I am. It seems easier. I'm not sure because
logically it seems like it would transition to the E natural much better. I've never been one to love the sound of that middle finger on the flutes that I've played, so I'm old fashioned. But so if you were watching my hands, I was using the third finger, but the middle finger might feel more comfortable for many of you. It does lower the pitch. It might sound quite nice even if you use that middle finger, but that could be something to consider doing on that high F sharp. Also, is the thumb 1 3 2 pinky instead of 3 pinky. So not both, but the middle finger instead of the third finger. That can.
I do use the middle F sharp just because it is a lot easier for me, and with it kind of not being so slow, I think you can't really hear the intonation that bad.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah,
just me. It's just easier for me to do it that way.
I think that if we were to do like a poll on the Flute Forum or something that has like tens of thousands of participants, I would imagine the majority of flute players would say that they do the middle finger F sharp for that high F sharp. So um, there's nothing wrong with it. And also another thing I remind this group a lot is we aren't getting paid to play this music, right? So if we want to do a little bit of cheating to make something easier and more enjoyable for us, if you're enjoying the music more, do you think you're going to give a better gift to your audience or a less good gift to your audience? If you enjoy it more, your gift is going to be better. So don't worry about some of those little things that maybe your seventh grade teacher told you not to do. Except the first finger should be up on the middle D and E flat. Okay, that is one thing that I do want to keep in this group. But a lot of the alternate fingerings, if it makes life more enjoyable, just go ahead and make life more enjoyable. Great. Let's see, Joan. Can we try see if we can hear a little bit from you today?
Okay, my question was, or my problem, I don't know, I don't think it's a problem, but I tend to emphasize certain notes more than others just because I think it sounds better, but I'm not sure whether that's a classical way of playing since this is classical, the classical period. I think it still is. So that was my question about, that was my problem. So I'll start with measure 13. And I'll show you an example of how I do this. No.
All right, and Joan, let's double check. Does your device say original sound for musicians
Oh,
on?
to tell you the truth, I am on an iPhone because I'm reading on my iPad with the My Pianist um, app. So I'm on that app, and and for this Zoom session, I'm on an iPhone. So I don't know if that's probably not working. And
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't.
not hearing you right now, and as a non-Apple person, I don't know a quick fix for that either. But I
Uh,
do know what you're talking about, and I think that you're going to refer to bringing out in measure 15, for example, the B natural,
yes.
and then the A.
Oh, and then the A. There's I play two triplets and then I emphasize the A and then I emphasize the C again. That and in the third set of triplets. You know what I mean? So it's da 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 like that.
Yeah. All right, show of hands, and I wish we could do a show of hands easier. So the fear I think that Joan has is making it sound overly romantic. Period.
That's it.
But
That's
how
it.
many of you like to kind of stress those what I'm going to call pedal tones, those notes that seem like they're part of the harmony a little bit more too? Yeah, I think you're going to get a lot of thumbs up from that. So the way it would sound. Or maybe even because we're playing metal flutes, we stress it with a hint of vibrato. So, personally, Matthew Allison speaking, I always emphasize beats 1 and 2 of both of those measures, and I sometimes do a little emphasis on 3 and in the first measure, and I sometimes don't do any emphasis on the 3 and. I like the movement of the B A natural and the F sharp C sharp a bit more. So if I only do beats 1 and 2, it would sound like that. So there's a lot of variations that we can do here, and I think this is what makes each performance unique and why music will never be an AI driven thing because we each get to bring a little bit of ourselves into it. And Joan, I wish I could hear you playing it so we could talk about how what you're doing is probably really, really, really great. Another thing that everybody in this group can do or consider doing for next time is you can also pre-record yourself and then share the recording of yourself. And we can still discuss what's going on in the recording that way too. But that might take away some of these microphone issues. So everybody consider that as an option too.
And
Uh,
another thing I noticed that you're doing that I didn't do is you're you're shortening the in the triplet. You're almost making the second two notes staccato. So you're really, really emphasizing the first note of the triplet. And I don't think I do that. I don't quite make those second notes, a second and third note of each triplet, much shorter. You're doing
Well,
makes it much different.
music in this period, I think the art of subtlety is important, but also maybe if it's too subtle, it's not going to be heard. So when it goes faster, the separation will probably be less obvious between those notes as when it's going slow.
Right.
But yes, if I want to emphasize certain notes, then I might make the other notes around it the opposite. So if I'm going to make a couple of notes longer, I might make the rest of the notes shorter, so that way that contrast is not just perceptible but understood. I
Oh, I think it's less romantic sounding the way you did it than when I do it. I mean, I emphasize those first notes, and then I don't make the other two notes necessarily shorter. I keep the time, but they're not almost staccato-ish. It sounded like,
mm,
but I don't do that. So anyway, that's another
yes,
just
art
another.
articulation is one of our expressive elements, and it is also something just like our tone. Each of us have different shapes and size tongues, and we use them differently too. And if we have language differences, or if we just even have dialect differences, sometimes the way that we articulate comes across a little bit differently for those reasons also. Other thoughts about the articulation, and how we use the articulation or stress or don't stress around measure 13 or specifically 15 and 16. Other thoughts, other opinions? And while we're opening up to the group to do some more feedback and some more discussion, Joan, you might notice that Sean typed into the chat directions for how to get the original sound on for an iPhone.
Ooh,
Thanks, Sean.
okay, Sean. Okay.
So just check out the chat. All right. While Joan's looking at that, any other thoughts about the articulation of the measures and those measures, or questions about the articulation? And I can't see everybody at once, so go ahead and like unmute yourself and shout out if you are wanting to chat. All right. Well, with that in mind, then let's go ahead and hop over to Mindy Lou and hear a little bit from you.
Okay. What do you want to hear? Where
I'd
should
love
we?
to hear any amount of what you'd like to play.
It's such a pretty piece. So, I don't know.
We've got time. You can play as much as you'd like.
I don't need. Do you want to start like? I feel like do you want to start like at 25? Have we done that?
No, we've not heard that yet today.
So I think maybe we do that, and like if you could help me with making sure that I do the trills and stuff correctly. And 29 has like an interesting rhythm. How's that?
Okay. Beautiful. All right. Let's go ahead and go with that much, Mary Lou. Wonderful. All
Thank
right. A couple of things that you liked about your performance just now.
you. Um,
Nobody likes when I ask that question.
that I did it.
That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
What else did you like? It was really, really wonderful.
Thank you. No, I liked that I was going through it and I hadn't actually read it before. I had read it during the week, so I haven't looked at it. So I think I felt like, even though it wasn't really sight reading, that I did an okay job.
Yeah, you did great. Are there parts that I know that you talked about doing like measure 29 and some of the ornaments. From what you just played now, are there specific measures that you want to talk about?
So let's talk about 29 going into 30, where you have a trill on top of a trill.
Mm-hmm. All right. And actually, before we do that, I'd like to just make a quick little statement about measure 28. Make sure that in measure 28, your G eighth note isn't rushed. So we have da, ba da da da. If I were to slow it down, after we play fast notes, it's so common for the less fast notes for us to want to play them fast, right? It is an everybody thing. Can I hear that measure first? Yeah. So that way the F sharp is squarely on beat 3, right? And it was just a little bit early when you played. And then with that same thought in mind, measure 39, 40, measure 41, you might just mark a tenuto on that C sharp.
Which one?
Measure 41, that first C sharp.
Yeah.
In measure 40, we have those triplets, and then the notes after the triplets, those 16th notes, just felt a little fast. So going from the triplet feeling in 40.
It's like,
making sure we don't rush the notes that of measure 41. So maybe just draw a little horizontal tenuto line over that C sharp to make sure that you're feeling that rhythm go back into just a standard 16th notes rather than triplets.
done.
Okay, so 29, we've got a lot going on here. And kind of one of the things that we talked about earlier, and Sean pointed out, is a lot of the ornamentation that we have in this music are gruppettos, right? And so the A, B, A, G sharp, A is a gruppetto on A with that raised G sharp. So we can make it as fast or slow as we want. I don't think we need to worry about the 64th note triplet too much there, as long as the next A is on the and. Da 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 da. So let's just hear that beat, the first beat of 29 a few times. Actually, before you do, let's step away from the music and play the gruppetto like you're just doing an A major gruppetto. And then sustain the first A a little bit longer. Okay? And tell yourself, I'm awesome. I just did that great 4 times. Right?
Awesome.
That's all that is at the beginning of measure 29. Now look at measure 29 and say, I'm already awesome. I already know how to do that. Yeah. And then the next part is where we have the compound trills. And in the version that I'm using, which is the one on the My Pianist Pro app, all of the ornaments are marked as trill, many of which I'm changing to mordant instead of trill. Some of which I'm adding Nachschlag, or that trill ending to. Some of which I'm changing into a kind of a gruppetto feel, which would be like a flicking one time the trill, but then doing the Nachschlag at the end. So let's do a couple of options there. So beat 3 into beat 1. We could do a gruppetto on the F sharp and then just a mordant on the G. We could do a mordant. Let's try that first. So G, F sharp, G, F sharp, E, F sharp, G, A, G, B, G, D. So let's start on the G eighth note. I'm slowing it down. That's one option. We could do a mordant on the F sharp and then a full trill from an A appoggiatura on the drill, on the G. To me, that feels a little affected. That's not my personal favorite. You can do a mordant on both.
I'm not sure I'm doing anything different.
They're all really pretty similar. And that's the point, is that, like, A, the audience probably isn't going to know what you do. But also, the other point is there are a lot of options. All right, group out there, what are some of the options that you all are doing in that measure? Measure 29 to 30, where you have the two trills marked right next to each other. Shout out. If you're raising your hand, I don't see you. So unmute yourself and just say, hello, I'd like to show you what I'm doing.
I can show you what I'm doing.
Let's hear it, Joan.
All right, here we go. Oh, you might not hear this because I didn't do anything with it.
We don't hear it, Joan, but you looked great doing it. Could you describe what you did?
Yeah, sure. Let's start with the G natural. G, and then G, a quick G F sharp, da da da, and then I go to an A, a really quick A with the next note, da 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 da. That's how I do it. Because I always start with the upper note. So when you're going to that G trill, the second trill, I think you have to start on an A because it's Baroque or something.
Are you re-articulating a G to add an appoggiatura before the F sharp trill?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Sorry?
Yep. Da, 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 da. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly how I'm doing it. That's what I'm doing. Yep.
Okay. Neat. What other thoughts do we have out there? Sean, what are you doing?
I'm doing a trill on the F sharp and then a lower mordant on the G.
So G, F sharp,
it's really
G.
the same fingering. I'm just moving the emphasis.
Is the house awake enough that you can demonstrate for us?
I think so. Let me see here. Where is that in the music?
Interestingly enough, your sound cut out too. Could we try that again?
Yeah. That's because I haven't been playing, so I had it turned off. Something along those lines. Did that work?
Do it again. Oh, so you're doing a full trill on the F sharp and adding a G appoggiatura?
Yep.
Like so? Okay. So he's playing on beat 3, G. The and of 3, he's adding a G appoggiatura and then trilling, and he's doing 2 wiggles, it sounds like, on the F sharp. And then the G on the downbeat, he's doing a lower mordant, or G, F sharp, G, and then the printed B, G. Along those lines. Can you play it for us one more time, Sean? And then will you do it in context of the phrase? Lovely. What else do we have out there from the group? Gwen, were you about to demonstrate for us?
No. I was just going to look at my audio settings.
Okay. I saw unmute and I was like, oh, yay.
I know. I'm kind of trying to do what Sean was doing.
Other thoughts out there?
I have a question on the trill. Like, do you start, like, with the higher note first or the lower note? Like on measure 30, the F, you do A first or the G first? Or
so in measure 30, in measure 30, instead of doing a trill, Sean's doing a lower mordant. So he's changing that ornamentation. Yes, in this period, most trills would be preceded by an upper appoggiatura, and you would kind of lean into that note a little bit, or just to show that it's there. Um, but there are more ways to do things right than there are ways to do things wrong when it comes to ornamentation in the CPE. And we also have to remember CPE Bach was a transitional composer, so a lot of what he composed was in contrast or even resistance to what his dad was composing and what the true tried and true Baroque composers were doing. So CPE probably would have been interested to hear the different ways that it could be approached. Sean, do you have more feedback for that?
I just think it's somewhere in between the Baroque and the classical, so you can borrow elements from both, and I think it fits in very nicely. Just whatever feels right in the given situation.
Yeah. Any other trill or ornament options, measures 29 and 30, or other places in this piece that you all want to discuss?
So I just was like going to point out if you would do the trill from the top. So on 30, then we would be starting with the A, which kind of reflects the A from the measure before. And that might add interest to the music.
Awesome. Would you like to demonstrate that for us?
Okay. Now I got to get the thing you taught me correct.
Yeah, go ahead and lean into that A a little bit more so you don't feel quite so scared of it. Mm-hmm. And try to play the A without showing it in your entire body. Yeah. If we do too big of I am all for moving when you play the flute, but if we move in a way that interrupts the relationship of our embouchure and the riser of the flute, then we can interrupt our tone. So for now, just be a little bit more still as you play that for us, please. Yeah, cool. So that trill with the upper neighbor sounds nice there. To kind of holler back to the A in the previous measure. Other thoughts, other options, other stylistic questions?
I have a question about measure. It's not a question. I think it's a statement more. 32, where you have a G legato with a legato sign to an F sharp trill. Well, I think in that one you wouldn't repeat the G because there's a legato sign there. There's a curved line. They would just play G. I can't play it for you because I'm not hooked up that way. But G and then right into the F sharp.
Sometimes when the trill is preceded by what the appoggiatura would be, the appoggiatura is not repeated. That is not uncommon, what Joan is saying.
Well,
but sometimes people do, just because they like to reinforce the G as a suspension onto the next beat.
Yeah.
You could also end that trill, that F sharp trill in 32, with a Nachschlag if you want.
That's enough.
Let it taper away, and you could repeat the G as an appoggiatura if you'd like. Ah, that was not good hands. That trill, the Nachschlag is a lot easier if I trill with the middle finger, which my ego didn't want to do, but then I was like, heck, just do it. Just do it. So good observation there, Joan, with that trill.
What's the significance of the curved line showing legato being underneath the notes rather than above the notes? Is there a difference?
I don't have that in my version. Can you?
I'm in the app, my pianist app. Are you in there? No. Mm-hmm. Okay, you are? Well, I have a curved line under the G to F.
And it's not just a slur from the G to the F sharp?
It looks like a slur, but it's underneath instead of on top. That's what I'm asking. Why is it is there a special way of doing?
Probably a fluke of the software would be my guess. I don't think it
Yeah,
means.
because the stems are going up, they put the slur on the bottom.
Okay, the same thing,
Yeah,
basically.
most often slurs are written on the opposite side of the note head as where the stems are. So if the stems are going down, the slurs are usually written above it, and if the stems are going up, the slurs are usually written below it. So I think that's all that is the
Okay,
slur because the stems are going up there. Good
thank you.
question. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Any other ornaments?
Well, as I'm looking at 29 through 32, um, I'm I was kind of playing around with this while y'all were talking, but I'm probably at measure 30. I'm going to leave that C trill out, and go to 30 one and do the trill at the B. And then at 32, on that F sharp trill, I'm thinking about around with it. I think I'm going to do. That just sounds more because I mean we do trills throughout this whole thing. I think to me, it'd bring a little bit more character to it, a little more excitement.
Yeah, and I totally understand your desire to move the trill from the C to the downbeat B of 31, especially because it is a repeated B, where that B is anticipated before. So then you'd be doing a little mordant on both of the B's in that measure. That's a nice interpretation of it too, Chris. Great. Anything else anybody would like to share out today? Any other
Yeah,
questions?
I had a question at measure 15. Those triplets. Do you tongue all those triplets?
So
And
I tongue almost everything, especially in Baroque music, because I once had a recital with a Baroque cellist who also played viola da gamba, and he said, "Our bows are short. We can't do slurs. I need you to tongue all these notes, or else it doesn't sound good with me." The 30-second notes in this, I'm gonna slur, but anything other than this, unless I'm doing it for a nuance like the slur twos. I like to tongue most things in Baroque music and then a lot of things in classical music, just because of my conversation with that cellist that I was in school with in grad school. So um, it is not, if the tongue is having trouble keeping up, though, there's the option to do triple tonguing, which probably wouldn't have been used in that time period. But if you need to add some slurs, I think it's possible to add some slurs without it being distracting.
well, I guess the thing is, there's no place for you to breathe. You have to do those two measures and just take a nice deep breath.
Yeah, ideally, we would probably break the tie and measure 14 on the F sharp, and get
Hmm.
a breath there. And that, but I think it's also important in measure 12, where you have that quarter note rest, to just put a check mark instead of a comma, so that way you know to take a good amount of air at that quarter note rest. And then you can break the tie of the A and the tie of the F sharp in 13 and 14. And then prove to yourself that you've got plenty of air to get there.
Okay.
And I think you've been in classes that we've done in the past where we started closer to the goal note, closer to the downbeat of 17, for example, and then just added beats. And gone back further and further, so that way we begin to increase the way that we're using our air, but that practice is mostly for increasing our trust in ourselves to use the air and use it efficiently, so we're not wasting air too.
Thank you. I was also going to ask you, do you recommend a specific edition? I actually got my edition from CPE Bach.org, The place that's got so it's got like the cool gamba part and all that. But if I were to buy a print edition, do you recommend a specific one?
I personally don't have any preferences on that. I do like urtext stuff to play from. Urtext means that there's not as much editing, um, but in the since I've been teaching, my students generally seem to prefer the freest or cheapest versions of things, and so I've just gotten used to working with those editions.
With whatever. Yeah, sometimes you get lucky on IMSLP and somebody has put in all their suggestions as to where to breathe and where to phrase, and it's helpful.
The
Well, thank you.
yeah, the version that I bought long ago was the Southern Music Company version.
Oh, okay.
And that was, like I said, a long time ago that I bought that. So,
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, my experience with Southern music, sometimes the notes are wrong. So, I don't know about this piece, but
yeah.
anyway.
Most of the time, I try to get the urtext and then add in whatever I want to add in. Sean, did you have a thought?
These days, if it's in the app, I just use the one that Yuho made.
Yuho is a brilliant musician. He really is. He's a pianist, but he's also a violin virtuoso. So everything that he puts on this, he plays. Like he's playing it on violin, all of our flute music. And he doesn't actually input the piano parts by like on a computer. He's playing the piano, and he's just playing it so precisely that it is creating our accompaniment app. So like that is actually him playing piano behind it, and we can adjust the tempos, but only because he digitally inputs his actual live piano playing. I had coffee with him a couple of months ago, and I liked him before, and we had the interview 2 years ago with him, and he was super nice, and he's always been super helpful. But when I had coffee with him, I was like, gosh, this guy is really just a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant human being. So
Is that the My Pianist app?
My Pianist, yep.
Okay, great.
A lot of us use the app. I think it's $30 a year to have the paid version. Much of it can be done without the paid version. I think you can just see chunks of it, or some pieces might not be on it. But
Good question.
mhm.
I was just wondering, in a lot of places there's like a staccato mark, but I noticed that it's nobody plays it staccato. So I was wondering, like after the runs, those notes have staccato marks on them.
Yeah. So when I used to dabble in playing traverso, which I don't do well, those notes it would be a very tapery taper. And so it wouldn't be like a staccato like a band da, but it'd be like a do, do
Uh-huh.
kind of a thing. And I'm suspecting that's probably what Yuho had in his ear was that quick taper like you'd hear on a one key flute.
Yeah. Okay.
So we also had to keep in mind some of the articulations and the way that we've learned to approach them with our United States band pedagogy, some of our trills and some of our ornamentation. It's like, okay,
Right.
short separate. Staccato just means to separate, right? Does it mean if I separate by this much or by this much? And so
Yeah.
we
Right.
kind of have to figure that out on our own. So yeah, maybe just think of a nice little taper there. And the staccato might also be there to reinforce that the important notes are the downbeats of those. Zaga daga 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 da, ba da da zaga daga 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 da, rather than emphasizing the long note, which we have a tendency as flute players to do because we can put vibrato on those notes, right? So it might be that too.
Yeah.
Yuho is working with a flute player also when he's doing this. Sean, do you remember where he lives? Or Chris?
Don't remember where, but that's great that you got to meet up and have coffee. That's fantastic.
Netherlands, I think he might be.
I think it's Netherlands.
So he's got a flute player friend there too. So he like talks about these things with the flute player friend in the Netherlands with him. Cool. All right, everybody. This has been a lot of fun for me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back next month. Hopefully, when you got the Zoom link, it also just put it on your calendar for next month too. It will be the same Zoom link next month. And that date is July 19. We can always refer back to this movement if you just want to focus on one movement for both months, or if you'd like to start the next movement in July. That would be what the weekly goal suggestions are. Will be based on the rondo for next month. So we're sticking with CPE and getting to know it and feel it a little bit better. And again, if you are buying any sheet music or accessories, check out Flute World and use code Allison 2025 for 10% off. We love to support our friends that are supporting us. And I see Jana asked, where can I listen to the whole piece? Well, hopefully people are going to start posting recordings of themselves this coming week of the whole piece. Hey, Chris, you actually forwarded me to, Chris's iPad. He forwarded me to performances of people on Traverso. Do you have those links handy that you can put in the chat before I end? I wonder if I can pull that up. How do I get out of full screen?
Let me see. I don't think I saved them on YouTube.
Let me just get to the Facebook app because you put it in the Facebook chat to me. So I'll put Chris's suggested Traverso performances in the chat once it wakes up. Chris Lee, also known as iPad.
I don't know why my name didn't come up there. I don't know how I can change that.
All right, there's one. I don't know what's going on with my computer right now. And then here is another. And these were both enjoyable to listen to. Control copy. All right, go away. And there's another one. So, I'll do a prompt on the Solo of the Month Facebook page saying, because I don't love when people just randomly put it on the group. It's kind of hard to tell where our members are, but I'll make a prompt saying, do you have any favorite recordings? And then just click like reply there and post your recording links onto that prompt. And that way we'll keep them all nice and tidy and we can have a discussion and compare those performances too.
That's a really good idea. If that works out, maybe we should do that for future months. Let people share their favorite recordings, but still keep it from overwhelming the feed.
Yeah, I do notice though, once I've done that prompt before and then people don't reply to the prompt, they just add it. But I'm a obsessive compulsive personality type, and I like everything to be very tidy. And when it's not, I'm like,
we could be, a little heavier-handed admins and move those links into the thread if we had to.
All right, everybody, this has been such a great way of spending my morning. Thank you for being part of this group, part of this community, I think is a better way of describing what we create here in Soul of the Month. Every amount of participation, whether it's one note or the entire piece, is participating, whether it's clicking like or writing a nice comment to somebody, or even a little helpful tip. All participation is welcome and wanted and super great for bringing us all together. So thank you for coming together today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you very much, man.